In the dusty streets of a small Wyoming town where gossip spread faster than wildfire, young widow Clara Evans dared to accuse the most powerful rancher of fathering her unborn child. The townsfolk branded her a liar, a gold digger chasing his fortune, and turned their backs on her shame. The rancher himself, stoic, silent Wyatt Harlan, never uttered a word in her defense, never denied the claim. He simply watched her struggle alone. Until the day the truth finally surfaced, and the price of his silence cost him the only thing he had left: everything. Clara Evans had arrived in Bridger Creek 5 years earlier, a bright-eyed schoolteacher from Chicago answering an advertisement for a position in the one-room schoolhouse. At 22, she carried dreams of wide-open skis and a simpler life. The town welcomed her warmly enough, until she married Tommy Evans, a charming but reckless cowboy who worked odd jobs on the surrounding ranches. Their wedding was modest, held in the clapboard church with wildflowers tucked into her hair. For a brief season, they were happy in a tiny rented house on the edge of town, laughing over burnt suppers and planning a family. Then Tommy died in a stampede, thrown from his horse and trampled before anyone could reach him. Clara was 26, pregnant, and suddenly alone. The town offered sympathy at first, casseroles on the porch murmured prayers at Sunday service, but sympathy has a short shelf life in places where survival is hard. When her belly began to show and no ring glinted on her finger to explain it away, whispers started. Tommy had been dead 4 months already. The arithmetic didn't escape anyone. Clara kept teaching as long as she could, but the school board grew uneasy. Mothers complained. Finally, in the spring, she named the father, Wyatt Harlan, owner of the sprawling Double H Ranch, the largest spread in the county and the man who employed half the town's husbands. She didn't shout it from rooftops. She said it quietly to the preacher's wife when asked point-blank who the child belonged to. By evening, the whole town knew. Wyatt Harlan was 38, widowed himself for a decade, and richer than anyone else for 200 miles. Tall, sun-brown, with dark hair already threaded silver at the temples, he spoke rarely and smiled less. His wife had died birthing a stillborn son. Since then he'd poured himself into the ranch, building it into an empire of black Angus and prime grazing land. People respected him, feared him a little, and owed him more than a few favors. When Clara's accusation reached him, he was shoeing a horse in the corral. He paused, hammer midair, then finished the job without comment. He never denied it. He never confirmed it. He simply said nothing. That silence condemned Clara more surely than any denial would have. If it were true, folks reasoned Wyatt would have done the honorable thing, married her or at least provided for her. If it were false, he'd have sued her for slander or run her out of town. Instead, he acted as if she didn't exist. The town took its cue from him. Merchants extended less credit. Children threw rocks at her door. The school board dismissed her for the moral good of the students. Friends crossed the street to avoid greeting her. Clara moved into a derelict cabin on the outskirts, a place Tommy had once hoped to fix up. She patched the roof with tar paper, hauled water from the creek, and sewed baby clothes from flour sacks. Pride kept her from leaving. Stubbornness kept her from begging. Some nights she sat on the sagging porch, hand on her belly, wondering why Wyatt refused to speak. She remembered stolen moments in the lined shack during a blizzard the winter before, how his guarded eyes had softened, how he'd held her like something precious. He'd never promised forever, but she'd felt it all the same. Summer burned into autumn. Her time drew near. One October evening, pain started while she was chopping kindling. By midnight, she knew she couldn't make it to town alone. Snow had begun to fall, thick and sudden. She wrapped herself in Tommy's old coat and stumbled toward the Double H, 5 miles through whitening fields. Lantern light glowed from the bunkhouse, but she bypassed it, heading straight for the main house. She collapsed on Wyatt's porch just as the door opened. He caught her before she hit the boards. His foreman's wife, who cooked and kept house for him, boiled water and laid out clean linens. Wyatt paced the kitchen like a caged animal, hat crushed in his hands. At dawn, a boy was born, dark-haired, strong-lunged, with Wyatt's unmistakable storm-gray eyes. The foreman's wife stared, then looked at Wyatt. "He's yours," she said flatly. "Any fool can see it." Wyatt sank into a chair, face ashen. He reached out, hesitated, then touched the baby's tiny fist. Clara, exhausted and defiant even now, met his gaze. "His name is Thomas Wyatt Evans," she whispered, "whether you claim him or not." Word spread faster than the snow melted. By noon the next day, half the town stood at the Double H gates. Some came to gawk, others to apologize, a few to demand answers. Wyatt stepped onto the porch, the baby bundled in his arms, Clara pale but upright beside him. "I let her suffer," he said, voice carrying over the murmurs. "I told myself it was to protect her from worse. My enemies would have used her against me, ruined her name beyond repair if I'd acknowledged it openly. I thought distance was mercy. I was wrong. Cowardice, plain and simple. I stayed silent when I should have spoken, and I'll carry that shame the rest of my days." He looked out over the crowd, men who'd worked for him 20 years, women who'd shunned Clara at church. "Every one of you turned your backs on an innocent woman because I gave you leave to. If you want my apology, you've got it. If you want my resignation from the Cattlemen's Association, the church board, any position I hold, you've got that too. But know this, Clara and my son will live here from now on as my wife and child, or I'll sell every acre and leave this valley forever." A long silence followed. Then old Mrs. Granger, the preacher's wife who'd first carried the gossip, stepped forward. Tears cut tracks through face powder. "We were cruel," she said. "God forgive us." One by one, others nodded, hats in hands. Clara married Wyatt in the same church 3 weeks later, the baby in her arms and snow drifting past stained glass windows. The town turned out in force, not out of obligation, but something closer to atonement. They brought quilts, canned goods, a cradle hand-carved from cedar. Some apologies were clumsy, others tearful, but they came. Wyatt sold off the farthest grazing parcels to pay for a new schoolhouse and hired Clara to run it. He spoke less than ever in public, but at home his silence turned gentle. He read to his son by firelight, held Clara's hand across the supper table, and never again let fear dictate his words. Bridger Creek learned, slowly and painfully, how gossip can destroy and how silence can wound deeper than any lie. And in the big house on the Double H, a family healed. One quiet evening, one forgiven mistake, one truth finally spoken at a cost no fortune could measure.